Good morning, Birmingham Unitarian Church. Good morning. Welcome to all, whether you're visiting us for the first time or have been here many times before. Whether you're joining us here in the sanctuary or remotely via Zoom or watching this recording later, it's good to connect with you. Children and youth are invited to participate in our summer religious education activities during the service. If your child would like to join and you're unsure what today's program is or where it's meeting, please check with an usher. Parents and guardians are asked to accompany children to the program location before returning to the service. We also have care available in our nursery on the lower level for infants and children through age 5. By greeting our virtual neighbors, we build a bridge between online and in-person participants. First, we'll project on our screen the image of folks who are currently with us on Zoom. And if you're comfortable doing so, please turn on your camera and give us a wave. Now, those of us who are gathered here in person in the sanctuary are invited to turn and face the camera in the back and give the folks on Zoom a wave. Coffee and conversation will follow the service in Hodis Hall, which is located to the left after you exit the sanctuary. Our newcomer table is a place where visitors and newcomers can meet and chat with members of the congregation and with each other. All are encouraged to drop by that table. Just look for the colorful sign. And virtual coffee hour will also take place on Zoom after the service. Wherever, however, and whenever we connect with BUC, we are building this beloved community.
Today's chalice lighting is words by Albert Schweitzer. In everyone's life, at some time, our inner fire goes out. It is then burst into flame by an encounter with another human being. We should all be thankful for those people who rekindle our inner faith. Today's opening hymn is number 291, Die Gedanken sind frei. Did I get it? Oh, that's right, you have to leave.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. There's nowhere to stand. Okay. Yeah. Good morning. This is a new hymn to us, so we're going to practice a little bit, because just that one line is in German, the rest is in English. So it's Die Gedanken sind frei. Okay. This translates to thoughts are free. This is a protest song from Germany in the 1800s when citizens could not speak out against their government. Let's try it one more time. Die Gedanken sind frei. Die Gedanken sind frei. Okay, good job. It's a simple hymn, simple, even though it's new to us. Linda's going to play just the last part of the song, but I think everybody will catch on quick. Sorry, go on. Die Gedanken segeln frei, my thoughts freely flower. Die Gedanken segeln frei, my thoughts give me power. No scholar can map them, no hunter can
Good morning, BUC. For our opening words today, we're actually going to do a responsive reading that I wrote, and the words should appear behind me on the PowerPoint. Can you all see that fairly well? Okay. So I'll begin, and hopefully it'll be obvious where you come in. I color-coded this, so the part I read begins with the yellowish gold letters, and the part you read begins with a color I don't remember, but you'll see it's a different color. The religious life is both a spiritual quest and an ethical commitment. As a spiritual quest, we seek to realize our best selves, holding unconditional love as our highest aspiration. From whence we seek through false dichotomies that create separation. Part of it's missing. We're going to roll with it. As an ethical commitment, we seek to express unconditional love through radical inclusivity, accepting all people into this beloved community, regardless of whatever differences the world may recognize, and in light of the common humanity that unites us. Let's try the next slide together. There we go. Being ever mindful of these ideals, the living tradition of our Unitarian Universalist faith becomes a beacon to the world. We will figure out where that glitch came from and solve it for next time. I want to take just a second before Derek comes up and introduces the invitation to generosity for us. I've noticed we've had a number of guest musicians with us this summer. I don't know who you know well and who you don't. And they show up like Linda Lee here today and plays beautifully for us. And we haven't really recognized that. So I think this is your first time with us, though. I want to thank Linda Lee for being our guest pianist today.
Today's invitation to generosity for the mission of Birmingham Unitarian Church includes action toward positive change in the world. One way we live with this mission is by giving half of our weekly offering to a nonprofit organization that shares our values and addresses needs in the community. To suggest a nonprofit for this donation, please check the BUC website under Justice and find the application form. Our shared offering recipient for July 19 through August 30 is the Detroit Justice Center. The Detroit Justice Center, DJC, is a nonprofit law firm and advocacy organization working to create just cities where every life is valued and supported with dignity and care. DJC is a national organization rooted in Detroit, a city emblematic of both the harms of racial capitalism and the resilience of community-led solutions. DJC engages in legal policy and narrative work to inspire the work of building just cities across the nation. Their Just Cities national platform connects on-the-ground innovation they support in Detroit with growing national efforts to rethink the criminal legal system, safety, land use, and public infrastructure. DJC supports movements and institutions working to end mass incarceration, build equitable economies, and empower communities that have experienced disinvestment. We will now receive your offering in the spirit of gratitude in which it was given.
We only have one joy or sorrow to report today, and it is a joy, which is joyous. Mike Kendra and Kathy Duhame celebrated 25 years of marriage on August 11th, so congratulations. And this being the fourth Sunday of the month, we take time to light candles of remembrance. If you'd like to do so, we invite you to come forward now to light a candle in silence while Linda Lee plays reflective music for us, in remembrance of a sorrow that might weigh upon you or a joy that may lift your heart. Spirit of many names and one abundant love, we rejoice with those of our beloved community who rejoice, and we hold in our hearts and minds those who are struggling, who are grieving, who are worried, or who need strength. May we be for them a source of encouragement, comfort, and assurance. But not only to these, also to those whose struggles remain private. Blessed be, and amen. Sometimes I stand, sometimes I sit. And no, they do not teach you to sit when you learn homiletics in divinity school. But sometimes I just have the mood to sit. And someone once asked me, how come you sit when you talk sometimes? It's enough that you don't stay behind the pulpit. And I had to think about that, and I think it has to do with the mood of the content that I'm going to deliver. So we're going to have a meditation here and a moment of silence and then the sermon. But the sermon's a little different today. I've got 3 stories from the scoundrel Nasruddin from the Sufi tradition to share with you and an interpretation of each of those 3 stories. But I want to intersperse those with some silence as well. So today is kind of a combination of pensiveness and a little rational grist for our mill and silence. This meditation's a tad longer, It's going to be about 5 minutes of a spoken meditation, followed by some silence. And I hope you'll take it to heart, and if you're so inclined, follow the meditation instructions I'm going to give you. So I invite you to take a moment and let your attention sink into your chest. So shift your attention from your thinking mind to your chest, where you can feel the soft, intoxicating rhythm of your own heartbeat. If you can keep your attention there long enough, and you can become still enough, you can feel your own heartbeat. If you allow yourself to do this, you will find a comfort there, within yourself, that is always available to you, waiting for you to remember and to return to it. And take another moment and let your attention travel to the sensation of your breath as it flows in and out of your body, where your abdomen rises and falls as that life force continually fills you. And God blew into Adam the breath of life. If you allow yourself to do this, you will find a comfort there within yourself that is always available to you, waiting for you to remember, to return. So whether you prefer to place your attention on the rhythm of your heartbeat or the flow of your breath, hold your attention in either place and let the words I speak next simply rise into your awareness and pass away. You don't need to think about the meaning of these words. You don't need to let your mind cling to these words. Don't worry about remembering these words. Simply keep your attention fixed on the rhythm of your heartbeat or the flow of your breath, and let your unconscious manage everything else. So now, in this moment, you have gifted yourself with a rare opportunity for sacred time and space in your life. Honor that. In this moment, let go of all the responsibilities, concerns, and pressures of daily life that you have carried with you into this day. It's okay to drop all that for a while. I guarantee you that when this meditation is over, it will all return to you, for better or worse, as you so choose. But for now, a few moments of sacred time and space. And in this sacred time and space, I invite you to consider that your life is always unfinished business. And consider that the lives of other people is always unfinished business. Allow your life to be a work in progress. Allow the lives of others to be works in progress. From dawn to dusk, your life is a work in progress. From dawn to dusk, the lives of others are works in progress. From year to year, from cradle to grave, your life is a work in progress, and the lives of others are works in progress. Can you allow this? Can you have that much understanding and compassion for yourself? Can you have that much understanding and compassion for others? Do not despair that you are still in the making. Do not despair that we are all still in the making. This is the nature of things, the way of becoming, the point of this rhythm and this flow. Most religious traditions have a troublemaker, a jester, who is often used as a teaching tool within the tradition. One jester you might know about is Coyote of the Native American tradition, who would play pranks on people to teach them important lessons. Or even the court jester during the days of the king in medieval Europe, who would tell jokes and perform to make points for the king, although the jester had to be very careful that the point he was making didn't go too far with the king, or it might not have gone well with the jester. In the Sufi tradition, there's Nasruddin. How many people here have heard of Nasruddin? Have you heard of Nasruddin? Not too many folks, so this will be new to you. He's the troublemaker in the Sufi tradition, and there are lots of anecdotal stories about Nasruddin in that tradition, and I'm going to share 3 with you. And you got to think of these stories kind of as Rorschach blots. I'm going to give you my interpretation of the story, but it doesn't mean I'm right. But I think it might be helpful grist for your mill. So I'm going to offer you the interpretation of 3 Nasrudin stories this morning. And I'm mostly going to read. I'm not going to go off script a whole lot. And then we're going to pause for a minute or so between each so you have time to digest that point and move on to the next. So one story about Nasrudin goes like this. Once, while walking along a deserted road, Nasrudin saw a troop of horsemen rapidly approaching. His imagination quickly started to work, and he imagined himself captured or robbed or killed. And frightened by these thoughts, he bolted, climbed a wall, only to find himself in a graveyard. So, spotting an open grave, he lay down in it to hide. But puzzled at his bizarre behavior, the horsemen followed him, and they found him stretched out, tense and shaking. "We saw you run away. What are you doing in that grave? Do you need our help?" Nasrudin replied, "Just because you can ask a question does not mean that there's a straightforward answer to it," he said, now realizing what had happened. And he continued, "The answer all depends on your point of view. If you must know, however, I am here because of you, and you are here because of me." So when I look at this story, there are lots of places you can go with it, but I'm pretty psychologically oriented, so I tend to give psychological interpretations of these stories. And the way I hear this story is about the fact that our mind is busy creating narratives about our experience in the world all the time. It's part of the way our mind makes sense of the world, so that we can operate in the world and go about our business. But you know, we often don't have all the information we need to create an accurate narrative of the world. In fact, we're pretty oblivious, most of us, to how much information we don't have about the world. And our mind will create a narrative nevertheless, but because it's our mind's narratives, we assume it's correct. Right? The mind abhors a vacuum, so if it's going to create a narrative but it doesn't have information, what does it do? It has to make that information up to complete the picture of the narrative the mind's trying to give to us. And one of the ways it does this is it makes assumptions and attributions all the time. And when I talk about assumptions, I'm talking about facts about the world. True or not, we make assumptions that we know things. Sometimes we do know them, and our assumption is correct. And sometimes we don't know that our assumptions are correct, but we believe them because they're ours. And we make attributions as well, and I think of an attribution as attributing to someone else a motive for their behavior. So we attribute motives to other people. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong. So in trying to create a narrative for us, our mind makes assumptions and attributions about information it doesn't really have, events that take place or other people. And often, these assumptions and attributions are false, usually unbeknownst to us until it's too late in the game to realize we had it wrong. This is Nasrudin's problem in this story. It's often our problem as well. Far more often than we think. The assumptions and the attributions we make about one another are one of the greatest sources of our struggles with one another. They are responsible for poor communication and fundamental misunderstandings about life and other people. You can probably think of a time, probably not too far in the past, when you drove your own self up a tree by making a false assumption or attribution about an event or other people. Take a moment and just think about a time when you just got it wrong even though you thought you had it right. We make false assumptions and attributions all the time. And we think when we're creating our narrative of the world and we're making these assumptions and attributions that we're learning something about life or the other people in our lives. That's what our narratives are intended to do, to make a coherent understanding of life and the people we encounter, right? But if you really think about it, we are so prone to making assumptions and attributions that with just a little bit of self-reflection, if you can ask yourself, am I making an assumption here? Am I making an attribution here? You often probably are. And the nature of the assumption or the attribution you make says virtually nothing about the world and the people in it, and an awful lot about you. What is the nature of those assumptions and attributions? Do we tend to attribute and assume the best or the worst? And what we assume or attribute is a big indicator of our personalities. It can tell us if we're optimistic or pessimistic, trusting or skeptical, honest or deceitful. So I'm going to take it one step further. Savvy observers pay attention to the types of assumptions and attributions other people make, and thereby learn a great deal about us. So what I'm drawing from in this interpretation of the Nasrudin story is a theory of organizational communication I learned when I was working on my doctorate of ministry. Assumptions and attributions are a big part of poor communication with one another. And so I learned to look for assumptions and attributions when I talk about people and when I monitor my own thinking, okay? And so I tend to watch when I'm talking with people about the nature of the assumptions and attributions they're making. And you can probably realize that pretty quickly, if you get pretty good at this, people don't realize that the narratives they're telling you, if you can identify their assumptions and attributions that are in their narrative, are telling you everything about them. Why did you make that assumption and not this one? Why are you making that attribution and not this one? Because it's the nature of who that person is. So often I think of myself as the fly on the wall in conversations. Go back to Nasrudin as the example. Nasrudin tells the troop of horsemen he stretched out tense and shaking in an open grave because of them. The truth of the matter is that Nasrudin is stretched out tense and shaking in an open grave because of himself. The assumptions he made about the horsemen told him nothing about the horsemen, but it told him a great deal about himself, that he's a fear-based person, or perhaps prone to guilt or paranoia or avarice. The assumption he makes keeps him separate from the reality of his world. And the same is true with us. And it would behoove us to question more often the narratives we tell ourselves. So a traveler was passing through town when he came upon a funeral procession. And he saw Nasrudin there watching the people pass by. And so the traveler asked Nasrudin, "Who died?" And Nasrudin replied, "I'm not sure, but I think it's the fellow in the coffin." And to me, this prompts the question, what does it mean truly to be alive? What does it mean truly to be alive? I mean, just because we're alive, does that mean we're truly alive? You've heard me talk for the last few weeks about the fact that we act out of conditioning. Are we really awake to how we're showing up in the world? I think truly to be alive is to live very consciously in every moment. And this raises an important question. Is it possible to think we're conscious when we're not? It's a very layered consideration. Seeking the answer to this question was the lifelong quest of the Russian mystic Gurdjieff. Has anybody here heard of the Russian mystic Gurdjieff? He's the one who brought the Enneagram to the West. I'm a longtime student of the Enneagram. I'm going to actually be teaching adult ed around the Enneagram for us this year. But Gurdjieff's big thing was, he had a saying, mankind is asleep. Meaning, we tend to move through life not awake to the reality of what life is and who we are in it. It's a very common theme among world religions and psychologists and philosophers. Carl Jung said, "He who looks outside sleeps. He who looks inside awakens." Or the Buddha. You probably know the story of the Buddha who spent many, many, many years trying to find enlightenment. He studied with a lot of Hindu yogis, and he didn't find any of their teachings or practices successful. So one day he decided he's done with that tradition, and he sat down under the Bodhi tree, and he meditated until he became enlightened. And the story is, after he became enlightened, he got up and he began to walk, and he quickly encountered 4 friends who used to be on this path with him when he was trying to be a Hindu yogi. They didn't recognize him, and they said to him, "Who are you? Are you a god? Are you an angel?" He was radiant. And he said, "My friends, I have simply become awake." So what are the indicators that we're living life consciously? Here are some. To live life consciously is to live with an awareness of life's innate joyfulness. A feeling of serenity, mental humiliation, to live with personal honesty and integrity, and a sense of innocence about it all the while being able to see the perfections in things just as they are. So we might ask ourselves, as Gurdjieff did, if we're not experiencing joy and serenity and humility and honesty and integrity and innocence and seeing the perfection in things just as they are we truly alive in that moment? Or are we simply dead people carrying a dead person to their grave? If you're not into the Russian mystics, maybe you'd prefer the words of my colleague Mark Morrison Reed. Mark Morrison Reed wrote a poem called "Let Me Die Laughing," and it conveys a similar sentiment. Mark writes, "We are all dying. Our lives always moving toward completion. But we need not fear death. What we need to fear is life. Empty lives, loveless lives, lives that do not build upon the gifts that each of us has been given, lives that are like living deaths, lives in which we never take the time to savor and appreciate, lives in which we never pause to breathe deeply. What we need to fear is not death, but squandering the lives we have been miraculously given. So let me die laughing, savoring one of life's crazy moments. Let me die holding the hand of one I love and recalling that I tried to love and was loved in return. Let me die remembering that life has been good and that I did what I could. But today, just remind me that I am dying so that I can live, savor, and love with all my heart. So now my favorite Nasrudin story about that donkey. One day a neighbor went to visit Nasrudin. And the neighbor asked Nasrudin if he could borrow his donkey. Nasrudin didn't care much for his neighbor. So he didn't want to lend the donkey to his neighbor and said, "You know, I'd love to loan you my donkey, but only yesterday my brother came and borrowed it to carry his wheat to the mill to be ground. Alas, I'm sorry, but my donkey's not here." And the neighbor was disappointed, but he thanked Nasrudin and began to walk his way. And just as he was leaving, Nasrudin's donkey, which had been in the backyard all this time, let out a big bray. And the neighbor turned to Nasrudin and said, "Nasrudin, you told me that your donkey was not here." And Nasrudin turned to his neighbor and said, "My friend, who are you going to believe? Me or a donkey?" Is that not a commentary on the world we're living in? Oh my God. Sometimes we appeal to reason at the expense of the obvious. This is particularly true when we would like things to be other than they are, or at least when we would like things to appear other than they are. The desire to have things appear other than they are seems to pervade our culture these days, doesn't it? We find this desire everywhere, from our families to the workplace to, yes, our highest levels of government. It seems that if properly motivated, if the stakes are high enough, hardly anyone is free from the desire to have things appear other than they are. Thus does everyone, it seems, seek to lead us away from the truth, using strategies that range from the hypnotic effect of soothing words or the intoxicating effect of pleasures, the withholding of pertinent information, or downright misrepresentation. I sometimes teach about the nature of narrative like this. There was a philosopher named Mark Taylor. He's a postmodern philosopher. I don't recommend you read any of his books because they're incredibly hard even for philosophers. But I did work my way through a couple of his books. And I'm going to quote you from one of his books. where he says, "You will notice at once a suspicion that has been gathering throughout our consideration of narrative. It is possible that there is more imagination in narrative, assumptions and attributions at least, than most people are willing to acknowledge. Narrative," he says, "is the work of creative imagination." One example, he suggests, consider the historian's picture of the subject, whether that subject be a sequence of events or a past state of things. That story, that interpretation, appears as a web of imaginative construction stretched between certain fixed points. So basically what he's saying there is, if you read history, I don't know about you, but I easily forget that history is one person's narrative to explain the past. But I tend to go, oh yeah, history, somebody's explained it to me, now I know history. And I have to remind myself, I don't know history. I know this person's representation of history and what a historical event meant or the importance of a historical person. And I have to remind myself. So what Mark is saying here is that a historian sits down, as do media personalities, as do social media influencers, as do our family, friends, coworkers, and government officials, and they pick the data points they want us to pay attention to. And they string the story that serves their agenda through those data points. And if it's a compelling enough story, if it's coherent enough, if it makes sense enough to us, if it confirms our own bias, we take it as true. And we need to really learn to question those stories, especially the ones that confirm our bias. So like I said, there's a desire to have things appear other than they seem, and it pervades our culture. Generally speaking, it's an effective strategy for preserving power, influence, material goods, or what have you. And as long as we remain susceptible to the hypnotic effect of smooth words, the intoxicating effects of pleasure, the hypnotic or our busy questioning, as long as we're susceptible to the hypnotic effect of smooth words, the intoxicating effect of pleasures, or our busy questioning our own sanity when confronted with the withholding of pertinent information from us, or the downright misrepresentation of information to us, we do not see the truth. Nasrudin's lesson about the donkey pushes this to the limits by misrepresenting an undeniable truth and attempting to get his neighbor to question his own sanity. Who are you going to believe, me or a donkey? Folks, rhetoric today is not too far afield from this, is it? So remember, always believe the donkey. All right, our last hymn is 396, and I guess we don't know this very well either, so we're going to have Kathy come up and lead us in this hymn as well. Thanks.
396, I Know This Road Will Open. It's a short tune, so Linda will play it all the way through so we can hear it. Then we're going to sing it all together once, and then we're going to sing it in a round. We'll go ahead and just split it down the middle, and we'll sing it 3 times as a round. I will lead this half, and Reverend Alex will lead this half. And basically, second half comes in at the second phrase, so it's pretty straightforward, okay? So after I Know This Rose Will Open, then the second half will come in, okay? But once again, Linda will play it all the way through. We'll sing it all together once, and then as a round 3 times, okay?
An Orthodox man, Imam, asked Nasruddin, Nasruddin, is your religion Orthodox? Nasruddin replies, it all depends on which bunch of heretics are in power.
I know a number of you were here when Bob Marshall was here, and then Doug Gallagher. And at that time when Doug was here, I was doing my internship in Ann Arbor with Ken Pfeiffer, a name you might recognize. And Ken Pfeiffer once said to me, in any sermon, you must do at least this much. You must give them a thought to go home and cut the carrots by. And what he meant by that is, there needs to be at least enough in your preaching so that by the time 3 p.m. rolls around and somebody's cooking Sunday dinner for the family, that you are compelling enough that at least something from your sermon is something they can cut the carrots by while they make dinner. I hope somewhere in these Nasruddin stories today you found something to go home and cut the carrots by. We'll end our service with the words of Barbara Peskin. Because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we still believe. Because of, and in spite of, the horizons of their vision, we too dream. Let us go remembering to praise, to live in the moment, to love mightily, and to bow to the mystery. Namaste, my friends.